I wanted to start, if we may, with Manchester United this morning. And although we're not really linked with too many players coming in, a story that's starting to show its head is in connection to the situation with Marcus Rashford, and that is of Paris Saint-Germain. Are they going to come in for him? Mainly more so in the summer. Is that a deal you think Man United are entertaining, or is that just people putting two and two together with the current situation and maybe getting 35?
Yeah, it's 2 and 2 at the moment and getting 5 or 35 or any number other than 4. And that's not to dismiss the possibility of PSG, because remember, Nasser Al-Khelaifi met Marcus Rashford's camp before the new deal was agreed. So we know that the PSG interest is genuine, and it's sort of the same for Bruno Guimaraes as well. The players are there on a radar, but timing is everything. And it may not be that the summer is possible. And I think that the Rashford situation is something for Ineos to investigate. And sources indicate that Jim Ratcliffe is keen on keeping the player. So they're not going to do anything rash, if you excuse the pun. And the other factor in all of this is Ten Hag, in the sense that Rashford's off-field issues are not in any way prompted by Ten Hag, but players still make their decisions if there's a possibility that they can leave based on the management and the football structure. So I think that it will be a two-way conversation and an internal one, and Jim Ratcliffe is likely to get directly involved in this, or certainly Sir Dave Brailsford. And then come the summer, they'll see if they can settle Rashford with a view to keeping him. And naturally, if there's a window of opportunity, PSG might move. But I don't think we're in a position yet to say he's on the market or he wants out of Manchester United. I also don't think that Manchester United is the problem for Rashford. I think Rashford is the problem for Manchester United.
Yes, look, for me, I'm really kind of upset with the way Rashford has behaved, everything that's going on. There's talk this morning, as we've all seen, about the club helping him with counselling as he's going through a lot of struggles. The club's also seemingly frustrated with him. I think Paris Saint-Germain's long-standing interest, though, is a good thing for us, because you can assess that situation. As we know, Ineos are doing. They're doing a sort of thematic review of the whole club. And if they look at Rashford as being an asset they can cash in on, raise funds on, remove from the club and buy somebody better, or buy someone who at least has the ability to remain more consistent. If we look over the last 3 seasons, yes, in the middle of the two, Rashford had the best season of his career, one of the highest goal scorers in Europe. But you can't be having one good year in 3 if you've got aspirations of becoming a team that genuinely competes again. So I think PSG's long-standing interest is and with Mbappe leaving, is something I think United need to keep alive, need to keep warm, because it could become a point where we say, actually, we need to move on from this individual ourselves. So I know nothing's happening today, nothing's going to happen tomorrow on deadline day, but I think it's one to, I personally feel like it's one to keep an eye on, should Ineos decide that maybe, just maybe, Rashford's been here too long with all the problems the club has had. It might be right just to cut ties from him, raise some money, and all move on to pastures new.
Yeah, I think, again, there's so much change at Manchester United that to preempt Rashford or to judge him on or off the field now is just too early, because the player can be refreshed by a new structure, a new minority investor controlling football, potentially a new manager. I wouldn't want to say that Ten Hag is definitely going, but we also can't say he's definitely staying, because the strategic review hasn't been done yet. So people want black and white, and sometimes you have to wait a little bit for context. Otherwise, you get sucked in, and then there's either outrage because Rashford might go, or some might endorse that move because he hasn't been informed this season. And naturally, Rashford is not thinking like that at this point. He's focusing ultimately on trying to refine his form. And now there'll have to be an internal discussion as to why, for example, a Belfast nightclub night out happened on a Thursday with Friday training. And this is where Ten Hag almost needs to be removed from the situation, because it has to be deeper. And Manchester United have to understand why it's happening. And that's not a job only for a manager. I think one of the strengths of Ten Hag is that he's backing his culture and he's being firm. But one of the weaknesses is he always being fair? And if he is being fair, and I think that we have to show respect to the manager, and some at the football club believe he is, and that when he takes actions, he's being backed from the very top of the football club, But a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work for Sancho. It might not work for Rashford. So it will need, I think, someone else with a bit more finesse, maybe a sports scientist, maybe a psychologist, maybe a coach to work one-on-one with him. And that might be delegated by Ten Hag, but it might not come directly from him. And I think that Rashford won't want to get sucked into any more off-field headlines. He needs to find his form ahead of the Euros this summer. That will pass. And then we'll find out what the situation is, because once the Euros is over, we'll know the future of Ten Hag. We'll know the new sporting director. The CEO, Omar Barada, will likely be in. I only say likely because the terms of the deal with Scott Munn, who also left City Football Group, didn't allow him to start until September the 1st. So sources basically say he can't start this season and it will be the summer. But the exact start date is still to be confirmed. But if you've got a big influx of new people and senior people on the football side and on the executive side, of course they're going to want to deal with Rashford. And if they're not even in, then if anybody tells you that there's a clear path for Rashford, either at or outside of Manchester United, they're lying to you, because Rashford doesn't even know his future yet. The executives don't even know, some of them, if they've even got a job yet at Manchester United. So trying to come to a conclusion now about Rashford is ridiculous. Nothing is black and white yet.
I totally agree. And I will say this to Man United fans as well. Don't be surprised if Rashford leaves and joins the PSG as an example, that you don't see him go on and be absolutely amazing. And the reason I state this is I believe the club is as big a problem in this as anybody. Now, that's not excusing Rashford's behaviour, but it's looking at the trajectory of the majority of players that join our club or come through our academy in the last decade. They all regress. They all end up with problems. None of them look as good. So, look, I think Rashford, I would also say this to Rashford if I was advising him. I know you want to be a Man United legend. I know this is the club of your boyhood dreams, but sometimes a change is as good as a rest. Viewers, let us know what you think in relation to that. Are there any chance of Man United making there was talk of a last minute striker addition? Choupo-Moting's been mentioned. Is there anything, as far as you're aware, in terms of incomings to Old Trafford in the next 24 or so hours?
Nothing at the moment. I feel like it's been one of those windows where the truth is quietness. So often you get asked about something and it's more often than not dismissing it. Maybe that will change in the next 24, 48 hours. A good example, we'll come onto it, is the hamstring injury to Raul Jimenez at Fulham, which might mean that they have to push a little bit harder for Amanda Broja. And then if Broja goes, it can set a kind of merry-go-round of movement, which might still see Chelsea even bring somebody in. So I'm always very tentative at this stage of the window, because as I'm talking, I'm getting lots of messages coming in. So I'm not being rude when I'm glancing down at my phone. It's to try and be as accurate as possible. And things will change very quickly. So time of recording now, the answer's no. And there's never been a guarantee that Manchester United would bring in a striker at this stage. And I think that's partly down to the wrong kind of profile. And it's partly down to cost. So when I say wrong profile, I mean everyone they're looking at is not available right now. And therefore, the kind of players now don't quite tick every box. They're either a little bit too old, or they're a little bit too expensive, or they don't want to come. So I think it's fair to say if Manchester United could absolutely get their way, then Sergio Guirassy would have been one, and Newcastle looked as well. But the player wants to stay at Stuttgart and obviously part of AFCON. So those two things combine and mid-season move becomes difficult. But that's maybe within Manchester United's budget, although they do still have to find that 20-odd million euros. And then the big one, I think, would have been Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting. And if they could have pulled the trigger on that, then they absolutely would have done. And the player's open as well. But the problem is buy-in in all of this, because even though Harry Kane's arrived, and as a consequence, his minutes have been reduced, he still appeared in 17 Bundesliga games. And last season, he scored 17 goals in all competitions. So at 34, Bayern are not necessarily feeling like they want to get rid of him. They value him as a squad player. And that's a roadblock, therefore, for Manchester United. So, of course, things can change in the final hours of the window, but there's never been a guarantee that Manchester United would bring in a striker this window, unless they either got a fee for Sancho up front, or the Sancho situation played out as is, and Anthony Martial ended up leaving. And that's not happened in this window and was never likely to happen in this window. And then all the links with Casemiro's going to go this window, no. Varane's going to go this window, no. That's one for the summer and potentially Saudi Arabia. There was a bid for Wan-Bissaka, but again, Manchester United had always intimated that they didn't want to accept that. So nothing progressed with Al Nassr, and now the Saudi window's shut. So when you add all of that up, Manchester United haven't had enough outgoings to fund an incoming, and that's why I think that it's going to be a quiet window for them.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Viewers, any questions?